Dear viewers, before I begin, please don't forget to like this page and drop your comments at the end of the story. I want to know your thoughts. Do you believe love can survive betrayal, or is trust the only foundation? Let's begin. My name is Madison Carter, though everyone calls me Maddie. I was 20 years old when this chapter of my life began. At that time, I was a sophomore at Westbridge University, a place filled with ivy-covered buildings, proud traditions, and students who mostly came from wealthy families like mine. If you saw me then, you would probably think I had everything. My parents, Dr. Richard and Dr. Elizabeth Carter, were well-known scholars with national reputations. My father taught constitutional law and advised political leaders. My mother was a professor of psychology who shaped education policy in America. Our family lived in a big colonial-style house outside Boston, with tall white pillars, a library larger than some people's homes, and more bookshelves than I could ever finish reading. I was their only daughter, raised in comfort, polished in etiquette, prepared for a bright academic future. People said I was beautiful, green eyes, chestnut brown hair, tall with the poise of someone who grew up walking in private school's marble hallways. But beauty wasn't what defined me. What defined me was the pressure of expectation. Everyone assumed I would follow perfectly in my parents' footsteps, graduate with honors, enter a prestigious program, and make the Carter name shine even brighter. And yet, what I longed for was something simple: authenticity. Someone who could see me not as the Carter girl, but as just Madison. That was when I noticed him. The first time I saw Ethan Miller, he was sitting at the far back of the political science lecture hall. His jacket was worn, his jeans faded, and his sneakers looked as though they had walked more miles than anyone cared to count. His notebooks were old, pages bent and frayed, but he wrote in them with intensity, capturing every word the professor spoke. He didn't sit with friends. He didn't laugh with classmates. He didn't even look up unless a professor asked him something. But when he did speak, his voice was firm, clear, intelligent, so much so that professors raised their brows in respect. Still, when class ended, he slipped away like a shadow. No one noticed him. No one cared. Except me. I began to watch him, quietly. At the cafeteria, I once saw him count coins in his palm, hesitate at the menu, and leave without ordering. Another time, I spotted him in the library late at night, reading under the dim light, his face worn but determined. His life was written all over his clothes, his posture, the tired look in his eyes. He was struggling. Badly. And yet, there was a brilliance in him that no one else seemed to see. The day our paths finally crossed came with a storm. It was late afternoon, rain falling hard across campus. I had stayed back at the library to finish an essay, and when I stepped out, I realized I had left my umbrella in the car. I stood at the steps, watching sheets of rain soak the quad, when I saw him, Ethan, standing just a few feet away, clutching his books in a torn plastic bag. His shirt was drenched, his hair dripping. For a moment, our eyes met. He looked away quickly, almost embarrassed. "You don't have an umbrella either?" I asked, raising my voice over the rain. He shook his head. "Nah. I'll just wait it out." His voice had a rough Midwest accent, the kind you only hear from kids who grew up in small towns far from privilege. Something in me refused to let the silence return. "You're in my class, right? Political Science 201? He nodded. "Yeah. I've seen you around." I smiled and extended my hand. "Madison. But everyone calls me Maddie." He hesitated, then shifted his books awkwardly and shook my hand. His palm was rough, calloused, so different from the smooth handshakes of wealthy boys I had known all my life. "Ethan," he said simply. And that was how it began. Over the next few weeks, I found myself talking to him more. At first, he kept his words short, guarded, but slowly, little pieces of his story slipped out. One evening as we walked together, he finally told me the truth. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he said, staring at the ground. "What do you mean?" I asked softly. "My family's poor." My dad died when I was 10. My mom works 2 jobs to keep food on the table. I take odd jobs on campus, but most times, I don't even know how I'll pay tuition for the next semester. Some days, I go to bed without eating. My chest tightened. Tears stung my eyes. Here I was, with every privilege, every comfort, and this boy, this brilliant boy, was fighting just to survive in the same classrooms as me. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I whispered. He gave a sad laugh. "Who would care, Maddie? This school's built for kids with money and connections. People like me? We're invisible." That night, lying on my soft bed in my comfortable dorm room, his words haunted me. I couldn't shake the image of his tired face, his rough hands, his quiet dignity. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't just pity. It was connection. From then on, I made a silent decision: I would stand by Ethan Miller. Whatever it took. Life at Westbridge moved quickly, but once Ethan and I began talking, I found myself slowing down, noticing things I had never paid attention to before. He wasn't like the others, not at all. Most of the boys in my circle talked about summer houses, luxury cars, or their parents' businesses. Ethan spoke about survival, responsibility, and resilience. He had an honesty about him, a rawness that stripped away the shallow pretenses I was used to. We began studying together in the library. At first, I had to convince him. "You don't have to waste your time on me, Maddie," he said one evening as we carried our books to a corner table. "Waste?" I smiled. "You're the only person in class who actually argues with the professors. That's not a waste." A faint blush touched his cheeks, and I realized how rarely he must have heard genuine compliments. Weeks passed, and our study sessions turned into conversations that lasted long after the books closed. He told me about growing up in a small town in Ohio, in a house where the roof leaked every time it rained. He told me how he worked night shifts unloading delivery trucks, just so he could afford textbooks. "I'm not sure I'll even make it through this year," he admitted one night, his voice barely above a whisper. I reached across the table and touched his hand. "Yes, you will. Because I'll make sure of it." The way he looked at me then, a mixture of disbelief and hope, burned into my memory. One cold Saturday in November, I invited him to the Carter house. I knew it was a risk. My parents valued social class, and Ethan represented everything they didn't. But I wanted him to see my world, the same way I had glimpsed his. When he arrived, dressed in his one good shirt and borrowed jacket, I saw how uncomfortable he felt. He stood stiff in the doorway, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Relax," I whispered. "They'll love you." But they didn't. Not at first. Dinner was formal, with crystal glasses and silver cutlery. My father asked Ethan about his major. My mother asked about his family. Each time, Ethan answered honestly, but I could feel the silent judgment in the room. Their smiles were polite, but their eyes said it all: he doesn't belong here. Later that night, as I walked him back to the door, Ethan stopped me. "Your parents hate me." "No," I insisted. "They just don't understand you yet." He shook his head. "Maddie, I'll never fit in your world." I held his face in my hands and looked into his tired blue eyes. "Then I'll fit in yours." That was the first night we kissed. It was gentle, hesitant, but filled with a promise neither of us spoke out loud, that no matter how different our worlds were, we had found each other. From then on, everything between us deepened. We shared late-night walks across the campus, laughing at little things no one else noticed. He began opening up more, letting me see not just his struggles but his dreams, of becoming a lawyer, of proving to himself that he was more than his poverty. I, in turn, shared my fears. That I wasn't as strong as everyone believed, that sometimes I felt trapped in the image of the perfect Carter daughter. Ethan listened without judgment, holding my hand as if to remind me I was safe with him. But with love came whispers. Friends warned me. "Maddie, people are talking. Why are you wasting time with him? Professors raised eyebrows when they saw us together. Even my parents questioned me. Madison, my mother said one evening, her tone sharp, this boy is not your equal. You cannot throw away your future on pity. It's not pity, Mom, I snapped. It's love. She froze, shocked at the word. Love. But I meant it. With every beat of my heart, I meant it. The semester drew to a close, and winter wrapped Westbridge in snow. Finals week was brutal, but Ethan and I studied together until dawn, pushing each other to keep going. The night before our last exam, he surprised me. I don't know what the future holds, Maddie, he said, his voice trembling slightly, but I do know one thing, I can't imagine it without you. I smiled through the tears in my eyes. Then don't. We sealed the moment with a kiss, snowflakes drifting softly around us like blessings from the night sky. For a time, it felt like the world was ours. Against all odds, against whispers and doubts, we had built something real. But I had no idea then how fragile love could be, or how betrayal could shatter even the strongest promises. When spring came to Westbridge, the campus bloomed with color and laughter. For most students, it was a season of renewal, of planning summer trips and internships. For me, it should have been the happiest season. I had Ethan, I had love, I had someone who looked at me not as Madison Carter, daughter of scholars, but as Maddie, the girl who dreamed and feared like anyone else. But life has a way of showing cracks in what seems perfect. It began with little things. Ethan started missing our study sessions. At first, he had excuses. A night shift ran too late, he was exhausted, or he needed to work extra hours for rent. I believed him. Of course I did. I knew how hard life was for him, and I told myself it was only temporary. But then came the changes I couldn't ignore. He became distant. His texts grew shorter, his smiles fewer. When we walked across campus, I caught him looking away, almost as if he didn't want people to see us together anymore. One afternoon, I found him sitting alone near the fountain, his notebook closed. I slipped beside him. Ethan, I whispered, what's going on with you? Nothing, he muttered. I'm just tired. But I could hear the wall in his voice, the one he used when he didn't want me to come closer. Still, I stayed. I reminded him of his brilliance, encouraged him to keep fighting. I defended him when people mocked his background. I even slipped him money once, when I found out he hadn't eaten for 2 days. He hated it, but I couldn't bear to see him suffer. You don't have to save me, Maddie, he said sharply one night. I felt the sting of his words but forced a smile. I'm not saving you. I'm loving you. He didn't reply. He just looked away. The turning point came at a party one Friday night. I normally avoided those scenes, but my roommate convinced me to come. The room was filled with music, laughter, and the faint smell of alcohol. That's when I saw him. Ethan. In the corner. Not with me. But with another girl. She was laughing at something he whispered in her ear, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I froze, my heart hammering. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a conversation. But then I saw it, the way he looked at her. The same way he used to look at me. I walked away before he saw me, my vision blurred with tears. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind. Had I done something wrong? Had I loved him too much, smothered him with pity he resented? Or was he simply slipping away because he had never truly wanted me the way I wanted him? The next day, I confronted him. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, do you love me? He hesitated. Too long. Yes, he said finally. But his eyes betrayed him. Then why her? I whispered. He turned away, guilt flashing across his face. I don't know, Maddie. I'm tired of feeling small around you. You have everything. You're perfect. And me? I'm nothing. With her, I don't feel like I'm drowning. The words cut deeper than any blade. Perfect? If only he knew how imperfect I felt, how much I had leaned on him to feel real, to feel human. I cried that night, not because he had hurt me, but because despite it all, I still loved him. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. Ethan drifted further, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, like a man torn between two worlds. He would hold me one night and vanish the next. He made promises, then broke them. Friends begged me to let go. Maddie, he's not worth it. He'll drag you down. But I couldn't. My heart wouldn't let me. Then came the betrayal I could never forgive. It was finals week. I had been preparing for my last exam, the one that would determine my scholarship honors. I hadn't seen Ethan for days, and my chest ached with worry. I finally went to his dorm. The door was unlocked. And there she was. The same girl from the party. Sitting on his bed, laughing, her book spread out beside his. Ethan looked up, shock flashing across his face when he saw me. Maddie. But I didn't wait for an explanation. The truth was there, raw and undeniable. My chest tightened, and I walked out before my tears could betray me in front of him. That night, my world shattered. I had given him my heart, my loyalty, my faith. I had stood against my parents, against my friends, against reason itself, for him. And he had betrayed it all. Still, love is a strange thing. Even as pain burned inside me, a small part of me hoped he would come, knock on my door, fall to his knees, and beg forgiveness. He didn't. Instead, silence stretched between us, heavier than any words could have been. And in that silence, I realized the truth: Ethan had never been mine to save. But what he didn't realize was that choices have consequences. His betrayal wouldn't just break me, it would come back to break him too. And when it did, the lesson would be one he would never forget. If heartbreak had a sound, it was silence. That heavy, suffocating silence that lingered between my breaths after Ethan's betrayal. For weeks, I moved like a ghost across campus. People whispered when they saw me, not because I cared about gossip, but because I had once been the girl with the brightest smile, and now, I barely lifted my eyes from the ground. Ethan avoided me at first. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was pride. But when he did finally appear, he came not with apology, but with excuses. Maddie, you don't understand, he said one evening when he cornered me outside the library. She doesn't have everything handed to her. She understands what it's like to struggle. His words burned. Do you think I've never struggled, Ethan? Do you think pain and pressure don't exist just because I come from a wealthy home? He shook his head, frustrated. It's not the same. And in that moment, I realized the truth: no matter how much love I poured into him, he would never see me as anything other than a reminder of what he lacked. I walked away that night, and for the first time since I met him, I didn't look back. But the world has a way of revealing the consequences of our choices. The next semester, Ethan's life began to unravel. The girl he had chosen over me left him when she discovered the weight of his anger, his insecurity, and his restlessness. The charm that had once drawn her faded quickly when she realized it was built on a foundation of self-pity. He missed classes. His grades slipped. Professors who had once admired his sharp mind shook their heads in disappointment. Rumors spread, of him borrowing money he never repaid, of nights wasted at parties instead of preparing for exams, of friendships burned with careless words. And then came the day when I saw him, alone on the same bench by the fountain where I had once sat beside him. His hair was unkempt, his eyes hollow. He looked not like the Ethan I fell in love with, but like a boy who had lost his way. I walked past him, my heart heavy but firm. Love had once tethered me to him, but betrayal had taught me something greater: I could not save someone who refused to save himself. Graduation day came. I walked across the stage in my cap and gown, my parents beaming with pride. The applause was thunderous, but my heart was calm. For once, I wasn't thinking about Ethan. I was thinking about me, the girl who had been broken, who had cried into her pillow at night, but who had risen stronger than before. As the ceremony ended, I caught sight of him in the distance. Ethan stood at the back, wearing no cap, no gown. He had not graduated. His choices had led him here, to this moment, watching from the shadows as the life he could have had slipped away. Our eyes met, just for a second. His face was full of regret, of unspoken apologies. And though part of me ached, another part whispered the truth: this was his lesson, not mine. That summer, I packed my bags for graduate school. My parents had arranged a fellowship that would allow me to study abroad. As I closed the door to my dorm for the last time, I thought about everything I had been through. I had loved with innocence. I had given with a pure heart. And I had been betrayed. But betrayal had not destroyed me. It had shaped me. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Love is powerful, but it cannot thrive where respect is absent. Sacrifice is noble, but it must never be one-sided. And sometimes, the most courageous thing a heart can do is to walk away. Ethan had paid the consequences of his ungratefulness. And me? I had learned that my worth was never tied to his approval. As the plane lifted into the sky, I whispered to myself, "Maddie, you are enough. Always have been. Always will be." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Love without gratitude leads to destruction. You cannot save someone who refuses to save themselves. Respect is the true foundation of romance. Walking away is sometimes the greatest act of strength. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched your heart, if you felt Madison's pain, or if you learned something new about love and life, please like this page and drop your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections. Your engagement means the world, and it helps me bring more stories like this to you.